Creating Jabba the Hutt was a long process. Although you might think that George Lucas had this in mind from the beginning, in reality, they just had a general idea of what kind of character Jabba would be, and had no idea about his physical appearance.
He's based on all the sort of evil sultan-like characters. You know, the large. I guess Sidney Greenstreet would be a good example, and Marlon Brando would be a good example in The Godfather.
Indeed, Sidney Greenstreet has often been given as one of the main inspirations for Jabba's character, if not his actual appearance, although I think you can see some of Greenstreet in some of the early concept sketches that they made. For many of the more minor characters in Jabba's palace, they only did a few sketches or skipped this step entirely, going directly to the concept maquette stage. But Jabba was such a major character, and creating the puppet would be so much work, that they spent quite a while figuring out his design. After making dozens of these concept drawings, some more humanoid and some more bizarrely alien, they finally went on to create three-dimensional concept statues known as maquettes.
We started off with this design for Java, which is basically a real sluggy, wormy creature. And George took a look at it and said, nope, not that one. It's too terrible. So we went to another version of Java, which is a much more humanoid sort of thing, the forearms. And he said, nope, too human, try again. And we ultimately ended up on this character, this very fat, slug-like creature who looks like he needs a lot of assistance from his entourage.
So this is the version they eventually went with, and you can definitely see that it looks a lot like the Jabba we saw from the movie. There's a little bit of confusion about which of the other versions came first, though.
George said his first design looked too human. Second try, too snail-like. Number 3 was just right.
My understanding is that Phil Tippett now says that the humanoid version came first, although I'm not sure it really matters that much. To me, this one is the more interesting of the two rejected concept maquettes. They described it as being too snail-like, but I don't really see much of a resemblance to a snail here. It's actually a lot closer to a caterpillar. In fact, a lot of people have pointed out the similarities between Jabba and the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland. They both smoke hookah pipes, and interestingly, Alice's caterpillar is often portrayed as wearing a fez, just like we saw on Sydney Greenstreet. I don't think it's a stretch to conclude that George Lucas thought this version might be a little too on the nose, too close to the caterpillar from Alice in Wonderland, that it might be distracting. But it's also true that this was a rather grotesque and bizarre concept for something that they would later turn into kids' toys, so I don't entirely blame them for skipping it. Now I'd like to look at this maquette in more detail. Now this would have been pretty difficult to do until very recently because we didn't have very high quality images of the maquette, but thankfully Regal Robot has come through again and has created their own replica of this concept maquette. They've gone in and scanned the original in the Lucasfilm archives and painstakingly recreated the original paint job as well. So one of the things that may not have been obvious when looking at the other images I was showing you is that his feet here are actually basically just human feet attached to a caterpillar-like torso, and he's also got a set of 6 udders here, I guess. Very, very interesting design. On the back of his head, you can see he's got a large protuberance of some kind that reminds me a lot of the final design for Jabba, actually. I've got to give a huge shout out, by the way, to the painters at Regal Robot. They just did an amazing job with this paint job. Look at this back here. They've got all this mottled skin color, things sort of oozing from various orifices. Really, really cool paint job. I was very impressed with this when I first took it out of the box. They've also used some clear resin, I guess, to simulate the various excretions on his face. He also has this large wound, I guess, or scar going all the way across his face, which is pretty interesting, kind of would have been key to this version of the character, I imagine. One of the things I love about these maquettes is that they make you think about what would have happened if this had been the design that they went with. How would the movie have been different? And how would Kenner, for example, have made a vintage action figure based on this design instead of the one that they eventually used? Here it is in hand, just to give you a better idea of the scale. It's a fairly nice size, and it's got a nice heft to it. It's made out of resin and wood for the base, as I understand it. And, it's similar in size, if slightly smaller, to the other Jabba concept maquette that they released, that Regal Robot has released. This one here, I've done a whole video about, so you can take a look at that if you're interested, but just for the record, it came originally like this, just this part, and they later released a very limited version of this wooden base for people who wanted to have a little bit more uniformity with the other ones that they were releasing. So, you can see here they go nicely together. This would look really awesome, I think, as a display of Jabba-related maquettes or statues. One thing I think is really special about the archive collection is that Regal Robot not only has access to the Lucasfilm archives so that they can scan and reference the original maquettes and make them as accurate as possible when they're making their replicas, but they also had access to the people involved, to the people who had made these maquettes in the first place. So in this case, Phil Tippett, legendary creature maker, head of the creature shop on Jedi, and creator of the final version of Jabba as well, but also of this unused concept maquette as well. And that's really cool. But even cooler than that is that they have these people oftentimes contribute original artwork in the form of a legacy edition. Now, normally these, at least recently, these maquettes have been coming in two different editions. One is a signature edition, which includes a signature plaque from the person who made the maquette in the first place. And then they have a legacy edition, as I said, that includes the signature plaque, but also a piece of original artwork from that person. And it's all unique artwork, and you never know what you're going to get, but it is, I think, really cool to get a piece of hand-drawn artwork from some of these legendary special effects creators. So this is what I got for my legacy edition. This is, of course, the signature plaque with Phil Tippett's signature on it, and this is the artwork that he did for my particular one. You can see, probably with this particular version, this particular maquette, because it's not quite as well known and not quite as iconic, it might be a little bit difficult even to recognize it at first, but you can definitely totally see that he's got this scar here, his mouth here kind of open just like we have on the maquette. He got his eye, and then these prominent, whatever you want to call these things, hanging down from his chin. So definitely, I think, captures this version of Jabba pretty well. These are quite limited. If you want to get the signature edition of this with just the signature plaque, that's limited to 83 pieces, and it goes for $4.99. And the Legacy Edition is limited to just 40 pieces, which is crazy low, and that is priced at $7.99. We're talking about a combined edition size of 123, so that is quite low for this kind of collectible. I'm told that they are starting production of this already, so that they should have these ready to ship relatively quickly. Within a few weeks, you should be able to get this in hand. And if you want, you can also use their payment plan, split up the payments for as long as 6 months. So that's cool to know. In conclusion, I'm just really happy that there is a company like Regal Robot around that's making this kind of replica and really doing a bang-up job of it, I must say. I never thought that this kind of replica would be something that I could buy and have in my collection, and so I'm just really happy that this exists as an object and that I was able to get it. Yeah, that's about it for today. Thanks very much for watching, and we'll see you again soon.